This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm very, very grateful for everything that you do. Please do check us out on these alternatives. Right down here, you'll find that YouTube sometimes deletes videos, so we have these other locations as well, and we've whittled them down for you. You'll also find the GunGuyTV Firearms podcast all over the place. That's an audio podcast that comes out twice a month. You can check that out. And we have shifted things around as far as social media is concerned. I'm no longer doing Facebook or Twitter. Instead, I'm doing these guys down here, and they're not as well-known or popular, but I do urge you to follow us there too. All right, lastly, before we get into the interview with Sam, I want to point out to you that there are all kinds of ways that you can support GunGuyTV, one of which is to use one of our sponsors to purchase things. And so you'll see on the screen here a whole lot of companies that have agreed to support GunGuyTV with every purchase that you make. Now, I'm going to put a link in the description that says get discounts on gear, and if you click on that, it'll take you to our website at GunGuy.tv, and you'll see a whole list of these. Some of these folks will give you a sizable discount if you purchase through them. But one way or the other, every time you purchase from one of these folks using our link off of our website, you'll be able to support GunGuyTV, and it won't cost you 1 red cent. So if you're planning on buying any of these products, please do it through our links at GunGuy.tv. Look for the link in the description. If it's on YouTube, you'll find it in the first comment pinned to the top. All right, let's get started with Sam. Sam, my friend, thank you very much for joining me on such short notice. We had a spectacular victory today, which oddly I notice is not all over the news. You kind of have to look to find it. What happened today in the Supreme Court?
Today, the Supreme Court issued an opinion in the case of Caniglia versus Strom. It's a case that we briefly talked about in one of our previous interviews. And they upheld a ruling that said that the police cannot enter your home and do a search and seizure without a warrant under the provisions of what they were calling community caretaker theory or process. They said that no, there was a ruling a while back where somebody, the police had a car that they had taken and impounded, and they had reason to believe that there was a firearm in the car. And since it was unsecured, they searched the car, found the firearm, and a lawsuit was filed, and the court held that, just as one of their responsibilities in law enforcement, not only in law enforcement activities, but in community caretaking, that it was prudent for them to enter this car and find this firearm so that it would be secured. Well, and what the police and the courts have been doing is taking that theory or that comment and taking it to the home, saying that under the community caretaking process, we can enter a home without a search warrant and we can confiscate basically anything we want, but mainly it's firearms. We had a case where a gentleman was having an argument with his wife and was very upset, and he took an unloaded gun and put it on the table and said, take care of it, end it all here, just take care of it. And the wife got upset. She left and went and stayed in a hotel. And she tried calling her husband later. He wouldn't answer. So she called the police and asked them to do a welfare check. Well, when they came, they found the guy sitting on his porch, and they asked him if he was suicidal. And he says, no. Do you mind if we send you to the hospital to have some a psychological evaluation? And he said, that's okay, under one provision, is that you don't come into my house and take my guns. They agreed that they would not take his guns. Once the ambulance came and took him away, they went inside and took the guns. And Mr. Coniglia, filed a lawsuit stating that this was a violation of his Fourth Amendment rights of unreasonable search and seizure. So the district court ruled against Mr. Coniglia. The appellate court ruled against Mr. Coniglia, always putting all of this weight on this community caretaking responsibility that law enforcement has, saying that this was a exemption from the Fourth Amendment that was established by the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court accepted this case. They heard arguments, and today they ruled in a very blunt and literally brutal opinion that said, no, you cannot conduct a search and seizure without a warrant. And there was no reasonableness. And basically, shame on you guys for taking the two words that we use to describe the activities and responsibilities of law enforcement and community caretaking and turning it into a more than a theory, but an actual exemption where this exemption does not exist. Now, the court also ruled in subsequent dissenting opinions that agreed with the ruling, but said that, hey, listen, there's a difference between community caretaking responsibilities and exigent circumstances. Exigent circumstances are when a law enforcement officer knows that somebody is in danger, an elderly person might have fallen, cannot get to the phone, they've tried to call them, and yes, they can enter the house. Or somebody they know is in the process of committing suicide, they can enter the home. Those are, they meet the standard of reasonableness, but the way they were using community caretaking was basically giving law enforcement license to go in for whatever reason to search and seize property from law-abiding citizens. The court ruled, most importantly, 9-0 in this case. This rarely happens, but this was so blatantly an issue of protecting the Fourth Amendment as written, as intended, and it was a 9-0 vote.
So the question I would have is how much, how often, to what extent has law enforcement abused this over time?
I would venture to guess that this has become a regular practice, a standard operating procedure for many law enforcement agencies who have been misled about what community caretaking meant, the fact that it was not a court-established exemption to the Fourth Amendment, and when they're taught in the academy or directed by supervisors that they have the ability to do this, I'm sure they've done it. But in this case, it finally came to a point where somebody filed a lawsuit, challenged this issue, and won with a resounding victory. There's no vagueness to this. This is crystal clear that law enforcement does not have the right to search a home and seize property without a search warrant, and there's a standard of reasonableness to that. So that's already well established. Community caretaking concept was not well established, very vague, and they used it as a get out of jail card or
get into your house card.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and that's what they've done. But now it's been challenged. That practice will cease to occur from sea to shining sea now. So with this ruling.
How does this affect the whole red flag law thing, or does it, do you think?
Well, Justice Alito pointed out that this case does not affect other policies like red flag laws, but that the same issues occur in those situations, and they expect that the court will be hearing and ruling on red flag laws also. It was almost something that Judge Alito did not have to say, but he did, almost as an invitation for us to come back before the Supreme Court with the issue of challenging red flag laws under the Fourth Amendment. Much like Justice Scalia said in Heller, when he said that this case talks about keeping arms in the home. And we know that the issue of bearing arms, which means having firearms outside the home in public, will have to come before the court to be explored and decided. So this is kind of the setup. This is the beginning of the whole exploration on red flag laws. They are singularly the most insincere gun control laws on the books in America. Here you have a law that ostensibly, through ex parte, that means you never know who the accuser is, can go to court and get a restraining order against an individual who they say is a danger to themselves or others, which allows the courts to issue the restraining order and law enforcement to go to that individual's homes and confiscate their firearms. And that's it just goes along a lot of the concepts of community caretaking. This violates the letter and spirit of the Constitution left and right. But let's just say that they really do want to stop people who are in emotional danger and they think might be a danger to themselves or others. The fact that they go and take their arms from their home, but do nothing else. There is no psychological or mental evaluation of the individual to see if they truly are in crisis, because if they are and they have those guns taken away, we all know how easy it is to get guns on the black market or to use some other implement to commit some sort of tragic act of violence. So they say you're crazy, you're a potential murderer, we're going to take your guns, and then have a nice day. How insincere is that?
This thing is getting very little press. And so that begs the question, how helpful is it to us? And in what kinds of cases is this going to be useful to us going forward?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I think this opens the door for us to challenge red flag laws across the country. I think that the argumentation that was used by the justices in their rulings and the dissents give us the ammunition that we need to challenge those laws, and we are going to attempt to use their own words to show that there is no justification for red flag laws the way they're written, and that they need to be overturned across the nation. So that's one good thing about it. The other thing that I'm kind of hopeful for is the fact that clearly all 9 justices saw a pure civil right that was being infringed by government. It was unreasonable. It was authority run amok, and they all agreed that this was unconstitutional. I hope that they are that clear-minded when they consider any of the Second Amendment cases that are coming before them, including the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association that they have granted cert to, and we'll be hearing at the beginning of next session, and we will have a ruling on that by the end of spring or early summer next year. And that's the issue of being able to carry a firearm. It's concealed carry weapons permits. The issue is of the carrying a firearm in public, and the whole issue of bearing arms.
In the concurring opinions, because there really wasn't a dissenting opinion, there was a 9-0, which I'm still stunned by, frankly. But there were concurring opinions which sought to clarify things, and I thought they were very good. And I think the one that you mentioned was Alito's, perhaps, but one of them seemed to be it almost as if he put together a laundry list of these are the kinds of cases you should bring in the future. I mean, you could read it, and I suppose you could look at it either way. You could look at it from a pessimistic view and say, well, these concurring opinions are meant to soften the blow of this opinion by Justice Thomas, or they're meant to leave loopholes for the court. And I just didn't see it that way. I think what I saw was, particularly on the part of Kavanaugh, and I think a little bit on the Chief Justice, was clarifying that, no, the exigent circumstance stuff still exists. We're not taking that away. We're ruling on this goofiness that you guys have done with the community caretaking thing, where you've made a doctrine out of it that doesn't exist, never did exist, and was never intended. And no, you don't get to do that. This stuff over here, this narrow stuff over here in the exigent circumstance, yeah, you can do that. But this stuff over here, stop it. No. But then to have Alito give us a list of, well, this doesn't settle this, but the court will have to look at that later. And it doesn't settle this, but the court will have to look at that later. And oh, by the red flag laws, it didn't address that, but we'll have to look at that later. I thought, you're right. This is just a laundry list of things that the justice would like to hear at the court, is kind of what I got from that. The other thing I think I saw in it is that I forget, and I'd love to hear your comment on it. I forget that that no one of our constitutional rights stands by itself. They're intertwined. There's a nexus between them, because this was not really a firearms case. This wasn't necessarily a 2A case. It was a Fourth Amendment unreasonable search and seizures case. But the two come together, even with the red flag laws, don't they?
Absolutely. The fact that this was a violation of the unreasonable search and seizure provisions of the Fourth Amendment, that was the basis of the case. But the issue was that the police came in and confiscated this man's firearms, abusing his Fourth Amendment rights. So they are inextricably intertwined. Say that 5 times fast. They are part and parcel of our civil rights, our basis for freedom and liberty, and our protections against overreach by government. And I agree with you. I think Justice Alito, some people will say that, well, that wasn't so helpful. I disagree. I think it was very helpful. I think he was kind of going, hey guys, these are the issues. Yes, of course, law enforcement can go into homes in emergency situations. They've always had that ability to do so, but there are other issues out there that need to be examined, and we'd like to do that.
What else, since we got you just for a few minutes, if you wouldn't mind kind of hitting the high points, what else is going on currently, particularly in California, so that the California folks who are watching know what we're suffering through over here?
let me look through my list of bills that are being considered.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, what are the top 3 or 4 that you're concerned about? Then we'll have another show. We'll talk about the rest of them.
Yeah. Again, they're trying to ban gun shows. They're trying to ban the sale of precursor parts at gun shows, which is nothing but a ruse to get rid of gun shows, because so many dealers sell bolts and springs and pins and trigger groups and stuff like that. They want to say that state and county owned property should not allow. It would be illegal to have gun shows on those properties. And again, because of the result of lawsuits, they don't learn that those properties are owned by the public, and any legal activity has to be allowed on that publicly owned property. So I envision that we are going to go to court again there. We're fighting bills that reduce the penalties for gun violence, where they are actually reducing enhancements from 25 years to life to 1, 2, or 3 year enhancements when you are convicted of some form of violence with a firearm. That is so crazy. Somebody who has actually committed a crime with a firearm, they're going to let them out sooner, which is ridiculous. There's they want to require all law enforcement agencies to have microstamping on their guns, even though no one applies microstamping, no manufacturer applies it. I guess the authors want law enforcement to buy microstamping machines so they can microstamp their officers' guns, not only their duty guns, but their personal guns too. Any guns that they would have to be microstamped. And they're trying to say that if they don't do that, if they do that, maybe manufacturers will be forced to use microstamping technology,
no, they'll just do what Ronnie Barrett did. And they'll stop selling guns to California.
Yeah.
And then the cops are going to be walking around with squirt guns because they won't be able to get anything else.
And also they want to, unbeknownst to anybody who buys a gun or ammunition, anybody who's on the system, they want to provide the personal information to University of California researchers for studies, not just an identifier so that they can do, research on levels of gun violence, what types of guns used. They want to provide the personal information that includes names, addresses, phone numbers, driver's licenses, social security numbers, so that they can use that data to correspond with Department of Motor Vehicles and medical and health records. And then these research institutions want to be able to provide it to states like New Jersey and New York for their studies. And worst of all is that they are going to decide, they're the deciders as to which research agencies are going to be able to have access to this data. Do you think that Professor John Lott would ever have access to this? He is a certified and bona fide researcher, but the Department of Justice has the ability to pick and choose who they're going to provide this information to. So it's just crazy. So whenever you buy a gun, you buy ammunition, they're not going to tell you, but they're going to provide your private information to researchers. A lot of craziness like this. We're looking also at the elections next year. We're going to have a whole bunch of rock solid 2A sheriffs that are going to be retiring, and we're going to have to work very hard to replace them with fellow believers, those who believe in their oath to the Constitution and the Second Amendment, who continue to issue CCWs and follow the law, as it should be followed. So we've got that interesting situation. California is going to lose at least one congressional seat. So we're going through a redistricting process right now where they're going to reapportion all of the districts. The competition for seats is going to grow more intense. And we'll see what happens. The nice thing about it is that all of the states that are losing congressional seats are all of the blue states, all of the liberal states, and they're all going to red states. So we can expect that there will be more Constitution-believing, probably Republican elected people coming from those states that are already very red. So we're looking at that and how that impacts stuff here, and looking for opportunities in state senate and assembly races where we might be able to make a difference. And that there's also a little thing called a recall.
Thank you very much for watching as long as you did. I'm very grateful for everything that you do. I should let you know that there was more to this interview. We actually got deeply into the ghost gun, homemade gun thing, and we had a very vibrant discussion about that. Since it went so long, I'm going to use it as a second video, and I'll probably be posting that in about a week because I want to give my GunGuyTV crew folks at Patreon an opportunity to view it first. So if you're on Patreon, look for that. That'll be posted on Patreon early, and then we'll post it here on the public places, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and so on, probably in about a week. So you'll be looking for that as well. Thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.